I wanted to give you enough time to really explain how you feel as the president of a country that suffered that terror attack, and you've done so very evocatively and very powerfully. But as you know, there is mounting concern over the scale of Israel's response to what happened. Many people talking and asking the question, what is proportionate? In your mind, is there any response that could be deemed proportionate, or will you do whatever it takes as a country to eradicate Hamas?
So first, let's understand the rules of international law, because most of nations tell us you have the right to defend yourself. We are speaking about almost 20 years of bombardments from Gaza, on and off, ceasefires, agreements, operations, wars, whilst looking for ways and means to change the equation toward peace. Gaza was taken over in 2007 by a brutal coup of Hamas. It was taken out from the hands of the Palestinian Authority, which is controlled by Fatah movement, and they literally butchered their family members and took over Hamas, and leading it into a platform of war by Iran. They filled it up with ammunition rather than doing anything possible to help their own people and upgrade their living standards. They kept on fighting and fighting. In the last 2 years, there was progress. Israel agreed for the first time to open up Gaza for Gazan employees to come to work in Israel. Tens of thousands of Gazans were employed in Israel, and money flowed in. They broke bread and money flowed in, and the economy grew. Little did we understand, naively, that many of those working in Israel also collected and gathered information about their employees, had given information to Hamas as to where each house is, where to land with your gliders, how to break into your fence, and how to get to the cities and towns in which they worked in. And the money that they took and all the income from your taxpayers' money for international projects in Gaza was basically used and taken by Hamas to build this machine of cruelty and barbarism
so,
that
Mr.
we've
President,
seen
let me just say,
7th of October.
Let me just say, Mr. President, I completely agree that Hamas should be eradicated. I think most right-minded people can understand that there can never be peace now after what Hamas did on October the 7th. But like I say, many people are looking at Israel's response now. Nearly 10,000 Palestinians have been killed since October the 7th. These are figures, I must say, which are reported by the Hamas-controlled Palestinian Health Ministry. They say nearly 4,000 children have been killed. We know that on Saturday night, the Al-Maghazi refugee camp, which is just to the south, was bombed. Reportedly 50 people.
Let me explain.
Well, let me ask you on that one specifically, because I don't think there's been a response yet by Israel. Hamas say that was an Israeli airstrike. Is that true? And how do you justify bombing somewhere that is known to be a refugee camp?
I'm not aware of this at all, and there's a lot of fake coming out of Hamas information channels. But first, let me explain to you what's happening. When you have the right for self-defense, you have the right for self-defense. We have been attacked from people's homes. We have been attacked from schools, from mosques, from shops, and people's living rooms. Now, you or your viewers, do they have a bomb? Do they have a missile? Do they have a mortar in their living rooms? There are missile launchers that send missiles 200 kilometers. That must be a huge missile. I yesterday tweeted, as our forces have walked into a theme park and a playground for children where they found launchers in the ground ready to launch missiles on our children. And I say specifically, if they are ready to launch missiles on our children, we must go and eradicate that site. Same goes for the houses. Now, how do we behave according to international humanitarian law? We alert the citizens. We tell them, in your home, there's a missile launcher. Get out of your home. Go down to the safe zone in southern Gaza, where you are getting enough humanitarian aid, and we will eradicate that infrastructure of Hamas. We sent millions of leaflets. We called and text messages and WhatsApps and SMSs and phone calls by 10 million number.
But Mr. President, let me
told
just
the
on
Gazan
that.
people,
Let me
go
just
down.
on- let me
Wait.
just on that.
So at the end, we have to go out and we have to go in and eradicate that infrastructure. Of course, we check ourselves with lawyers and jurists. We try to make as safe as possible, not to hurt civilians. And believe me, and I say it outright from the bottom of my heart, we care for every civilian in Gaza. I care. And I can tell you stories about me helping Gazan citizens all throughout my career. But with all due respect, there comes a moment where you have no other choice. Because if we will recur again, we'll go through the same atrocities again.
But I understand,
that
Mr. President, let me,
must
to be clear,
be eradicated.
as I said, I absolutely support Israel's right to defend itself. In fact, I think you have a duty as a country and a responsibility to your people to try and stop Hamas doing again what they did. And only last week, a Hamas spokesman said that they would try again and again and again to replicate what happened on October the 7th. So you don't need to keep telling me how bad Hamas are. I get it, and they have to go. It's just how you do this. And that is what is coming under criticism. Queen Rania of Jordan has called for an immediate ceasefire in a new interview. She says there has to be a collective call for a ceasefire. I know some who are against a ceasefire arguing it will help Hamas. However, in their argument, they are inherently dismissing the deaths and, in fact, endorsing and justifying the deaths of thousands of civilians. That's not just morally reprehensible, short-sighted, and not entirely rational. If Israel, she says, managed to eliminate all of Hamas, the root cause of this conflict is its illegal occupation and routine human rights abuses, illegal settlements, disregard to UN resolutions, and international law. If we do not address the root causes, you can kill the combatant, but you cannot kill the cause. What is your response to Queen Rania?
I don't intend to start arguing with Queen Rania because I know exactly the considerations and the limitations of the Jordanian regime under the circumstances, but I would expect a much better understanding of the situation on the ground. First of all, there must be no justification under any circumstances, none whatsoever, to the atrocities that we have seen and gone through, and no justification to terror, none whatsoever. By the way, this hate regime that attacked us, the first thing they'll do, unfortunately, they'll try to attack Jordan as well. We're all in this together. They'll try to attack other regimes as well. They're all in this together. We're all in this together. We are all nations who want to move to peace, and we're attacked by this philosophy of hate of Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hamas, Jihad, and the rest. They want all of us out of here, and they all want all of us wiped off, and they want a major Islamic fundamentalist regime throughout the Middle East. That's the real story, and that's the real challenge. With all the respect regarding settlements and all that, these are issues that are being discussed in a peace process. They should be discussed in a peace process. There are many ideas to have peace between us and the Palestinians, and how to move towards solutions such as the two-state solution. But it cannot happen if you support or if you give any credit in any way, directly or indirectly, to terror. We cannot accept terror. We have to fight terror. And then, when we fight terror, we can sit down and talk. We tried sitting down and talking for decades already.
Unfortunately, like I said, Mr.
remember,
President,
in the 1990s, Piers, in the 1990s,
I remember.
In the 1990s, terror, suicide bombers killed the process. That's the same like now. That's their tactics. That's how they do it.
But there are
at the
many
end,
people,
we're all
Mr.
united,
President, as you know,
the entire region to fight terror.
I understand that. And like I say, I agree with the mission statement to get rid of Hamas, but I share people's concern about the sheer scale of what is going on in Gaza, not least the mounting humanitarian crisis. You have over 1 million people whose homes have been displaced. Angelina Jolie, the actress, is also a special envoy to the UN High Commission for Refugees. She said this is the deliberate bombing of a trapped population who have nowhere to flee. Gaza has been an open-air prison for nearly 2 decades and is fast becoming a mass grave. 40% of those killed are innocent children. Whole families are being murdered while the world watches, and with the active support of many governments, millions of Palestinian civilians, children, women, families are being collectively punished and dehumanized, all while being deprived of food, medicine and humanitarian aid against international law. By refusing to demand a humanitarian ceasefire and blocking the UN Security Council from imposing one on both parties, world leaders are complicit in these crimes. So she's saying that you are committing war crimes here. What do you say to that?
That I totally reject her claims. I think she's never been in Gaza. She's never been here. She never went to visit and see the facts on the ground. With all due respect, people in Gaza know there is war, but there is no humanitarian crisis that does not enable them to survive. On the contrary, there is a safe zone which was agreed by the international community in Israel in the south part of Gaza in order to move the citizens to that zone, to take full care of them. There's a major dramatic increase in humanitarian aid to Gaza, which Israel has supported dramatically in conjunction with the United States and United Nations and many other nations. The Gazan people they can move there so that we uproot this terror regime. This is what we know. Angelina Jolie does not offer the Israeli people any ability to defend themselves by saying what she is saying. And may I speak about her comment that Gaza is a jail. Gaza is a jail not because of Israel. Israel pulled out of Gaza to the last inch. Gaza is an Iranian base filled with terror, smuggled with tons and tons and tons of ammunition. This is the tragedy that has befallen the Gazan people. Perhaps the outcome of this war will enable the Gazan people who deserve decent, good life to enjoy it under a different regime that will enable movement towards peace.
But part of the problem,
and may
Mr.
I
President...
add further?
Wait.
I have to clear this point, Piers, with all due respect.
Yes, of course.
It was the Hamas who destroyed the electricity lines of Gaza by shooting these missiles. It was Hamas who destroyed the water infrastructure of Gaza by shooting these missiles. Israel is supplying water. Israel is enabling humanitarian aid, despite the fact that not one detail came about the hostages who are there now in Gaza. 240 of them, not one.
Just to
Israeli
clarify one point.
people are asking themselves time and again, how come, with all these hypocrites all around the world, how come none of them bother to say, you know what, humanitarian aid, give information about the hostages, release the hostages. It can't go this way. You'll tell me, of course, the civilians are not to blame. Fine, if the civilians are not to blame, then please enable Israel to uproot these terrorists